Hello, fictional. Welcome to the What If Essay. Today we are gonna see, what if Issei was the Tyrant Red Dragon? Part 5. If you end up liking this video, please consider subscribe, so without further ado, let's get into the video. Inside the master bedroom, Irina gently sleeps alongside Zenobia, who has been asleep through this whole ordeal. Kuroka has a pair of Valkyries near the bed with Rias there listening. I need the both of you guard these two. Don't need to remind you both of how important these two are, especially with those buns cooking in M. She orders the two, who stand steadily with nods and take positions across the bed. Curious, Rias asks what happened out there. I was told to stay here with Zenobia and everyone seems in a panic. She just waves it off, it was just a little issue, but we handled it. She leaves after this with Rias putting a bit of a conflicted look. In the hallway, Kuroka exits from the bedroom door and sees Issei to the side, walking with a concerned look on his face. Looking empathetic, she smiles and approaches him. Hey there, hubby. Need a little cheering up? She asks while getting closer. Oh, nah, I'm busy right now. He answers, not looking at her. But she walks closer with a rather seductive sway while she wraps her arms around his neck. What? Am I not sexy enough right now? Well, no, but I'm. He tries to say, but Kuroka immediately presses her lips against his face and begins rubbing her leg against his right thigh, and he closes his eyes as he presses her against the wall, once again starting a makeout session with another wife. But after this, he pulls his face away with a little blush on his face and lightly saying, we can have dirty time later. I just have things to do right now. Fine, but I'm holding you to that. She replies with a bit of a pout. Issei walks away and pulls out the slip to look at it, thinking I hope this is worth missing out having quickie with Kuroka. Dot puts on a lewd smile. Who am I kidding, hardly anything is. He then shakes his head to get serious. Behind him, Kuroka meets up with Akeno and tells her, hey, I need a favor from you. To which Akeno puts on a distrusting look, but Kuroka affirms, trust me, it's for Issei. A little later, Issei meets up in the room and finds Griselda waiting patiently with a cup of tea in her hand. Okay, so what's this thing you need to talk about? He asks with a look showing distrust. Despite her demeanor, Griselda takes a deep breath, looks at the door and firstly states, okay, Issei, what I'm about to tell must stay between us and no one else. Recognizing the severity of these words, he personally checks the door and tells her, fine, I'll give the locked door, but I'm not making promises on keeping my mouth shut. Nodding hesitantly, she produces a letter with a broken seal on it and she hands it to him, assuring, all I want to say is neither that Lord Michael nor any high-ranking angel sent me this, that's all I know. Issei takes it and reads it for a moment and grips it tightly. What the hell is this shit? That's right. Someone inside the church wanted me to come here to kill Irina and Zenobia for heaven. They don't want you to have any heirs. She admits with a nervous look. He looks as if he's about to do something terrible as he seemingly glows with power, but then he looks at Griselda's genuine unease about, so he takes a breath instead. Hey, do you know who sent this, any ideas at all? He asks with traces of anger in his voice. She shakes her head. No, all I know is that it must have been someone highly ranked. But I can promise that it wasn't Lord Michael or Lady Gabriel without a doubt, and I don't think the other archangels would do this either. But it could be behind the rumors about you as well. Right, Tauji said he heard many things about what I did with Irina and Zenobia. But Chains isn't exactly wrong either. This time with a blush of her own, Griselda confesses, I had also heard of some horrible rumor about you that I am glad are false. I had heard that you keep girls imprisoned in a cell in your basement and only fed them bare essentials once a day and commit unspeakable acts to them. But I didn't really believe them given the vivid details and all. His face then turns irritated. Geez, you do a little foreplay and everyone suddenly thinks I'm abusive with my wives. Can't a guy just have a harem and just enjoy the fun without rumors shooting down his mood? Griselda, making a somewhat annoyed noise, gets back on topic. Issei, my point being is that the problems don't come from Lord Michael, there are others who make calls to get those swords back from you, we're all desperate. Her hands turning to fists and she looks uneasy, but I promise you that Lord Michael would never stoop as low as to murder pregnant women, it's too beneath him and me. He looks closer at the letter, unease himself. Man, I didn't think it'd go this far. Sending in an assassin to kill my kids. That's weak. I couldn't agree more. That's why I wanted to tell you. Issei, I think you should truly consider making a deal with us for the holy swords. She approaches him with a determined look. Before you think I'm trying to manipulate you, consider this, people are trying to cut off your bloodline. To do this, they may do more than come after your family here. They could go after your entire family, anyone who has the same bloodline as you as a precaution, whether they know it or not. Trying to remain calm, Issei's face looks worried, thinking on it. Yeah, that's true. If people you know won't go after unborn babies, then my parents and anyone I might be related to, yeah. But I don't know about dealing with this out of the blue. She approaches him, genuinely looking sincere, puts her hands on his shoulders. Please, don't make heaven your enemy. Don't make me and Zenobia enemies, and don't endanger your children for your pride. Issei turns his head. I don't need time to think, he says with uncertainty. Griselda lets him go, nods, and walks out of the room without a word. Issei stands there, his face looking uncertain. He waits for a moment, his head filled with thoughts. Tell me how you really feel, hubby. A sarcastically familiar voice says to him. Sighing, he looks the other way. Hey Kuroka. I'm not in the mood yet. Oh, you're no fun. But I understand, got that angel chick in here, putting weird thoughts in your head and all. Issei lowers his body and takes a deep breath, but she's got a point on something. She said that this whole business could make it near impossible to enjoy ourselves, at least without us keeping up the kills on everyone. Sighing herself, Kuroka lifts up his face. Then don't let them bug you about it. Those swords are your property as far as we're concerned, right? I dunno at this point. They got a ton of money and we did a little good with Riaz and her team. But when it comes us and my kids, I just don't think it's worth it anymore to keep up the stubbornness. He says looking doubtful. Then tell Michael to pull that stick out of his ass and permanently end any and all activities in Kuo. What are you talking about, Kuroka? He then stands up looking a bit surprised. She then suggests you tell them this. For the rest of the holy swords, Michael must end all activities in Kuo town, and that all angels, exorcists, priests, and any affiliates with the church have to hit the road and never come back. Obstinity replies. Whoa, that's asking a lot for just a few swords. Besides, why would I want that altogether? But then, someone enters the room with them, Akeno, and she bows to the two saying, I did that favor you ask of me. But Issei wonders what favor. To which Kuroka answers, I had you little mistress here bug your guest's room. Get the scoop first and make a call from there. Hold on a second. He sternly states, I didn't want you to bug them. I want to trust Irina's father, he's good guy. But Kuroka annoyingly rebukes, I don't trust them, Issei. If they're desperate enough, they'll answer our demands, or they'll send more ways to persuade you. I think they sent those two to tug at your heartstrings, and it worked apparently. No, Office put a spell on this place so that guests can't lie to me. Everything that Griselda told me had to be the truth. Yes, but the truth as she knows it. For all we know, they gave her bum information to tell you to get your guard down or make you think they want peace. She suggests. In the guest area, Akeno brings a tray to Tauji's room with tea and cookies laid out for enjoyment. Compliments of a dragon to our guests. She bows and immediately leaves. Smiling, Tauji sighs as soon as Akeno leaves the guest room. I can't believe Irina has become capable of that kind of destruction. The power of the evil dragons is truly terrifying. He sips some tea as Griselda makes an entrance to the room and has a calm look on her face. Sorry for leaving you so abruptly. It's alright. Why did you go anyway? His face looking very curious. I had an important matter to talk with Issei about. I wanted some to see if we couldn't come to an easier agreement. Anxiously, Tauji reminds her, Griselda, we aren't supposed to be too pushy with him. We are to peacefully discuss the holy swords together and without deceit. I don't want him to separate me from family. But that word, family, makes Griselda frown, saying, oh, Zenobia, why did you rush into this so quickly? She didn't even try to contact me. I would have liked to have known sooner you were expecting. I know how you feel about that. I love the idea of being a grandfather, but Irina is so young. I really hope they can handle being parents. Issei has his eyes gazed upon a piece of metal Kuroka is holding, who seems to be a bit surprised. Wow, I surprised we didn't hear anything juicier. He shakes his head. See, Kuroka, they are good people, just nervous about the whole baby thing. My thoughts aren't changed on this. I think you should demand territory from them. Kuo is a good place to start. You rule this town, and then they obey your rules, not theirs. She stubbornly replies. Sighing to himself, fine, but I won't act without talking to Rose first. Oh, come on, don't be a little bitch about this. What good is going to talk to Miss X Valkyrie going to do you? She complains with annoyance in her voice. Rose is the person I trust most with this stuff. It's because of her that I got this far with making deals. So I'm not going to back out of that now. Looking around, Kuroka curiously asks, where is she actually? I haven't seen her in a few hours. She'll probably show up sooner or later. She's never out too long and all. Outside Hyoudou residence. Roswis bows to her mother and father-in-law and happily says, it was a pleasure to meet you both and I hope you can forgive us for worrying you so much. But, enthusiastically, Miku states, oh no, don't apologize to us. Yeah, we're just really, and I mean really, surprised by this whole idea. Here we thought our son wouldn't be able to get a real girlfriend. Her husband jumps in. Then the husband and wife look at each happily and expectantly. That means we have a shot at have grandchildren. They both say as they embrace each other. Sheepishly, Roswis excuses herself as the door closes and she makes her way home. Taking the long way for a moment, she reminisces their good parents. Loving and caring, I'm glad they showed up today. As she walks further away, she frowns for a moment. You can all come out now. As a couple of magic circles appear around her with some people wearing garb-like attire appear, all women. R apologizes, but you will come us, wife of the Tyrant Red Dragon. The group of people reveals devil wings, and one appears wearing blue and with pale long hair with an arrogant smile on her face. If you don't comply, we'll be forced to make other arrangements at the Hyoudou residence. She threatens. Roswis immediately lets out an annoyed sound. We've done our part to keep away from violent acts with the underworld. So, I have no reason to comply with a threat. Her eyes turn to slits for a moment as the area around seemingly becomes more suffocating, then her eyes glow black for a moment, then a cloud appears surrounding them, along with a veil of darkness, somewhat shocking the group of devils. Now, she looks at the leader with a look of death as she just blankly stares back, and the group of devils back up a little, until one touches the cloud, and she immediately yells in pain, as her flesh begins to corrode and break off. Roswis then states threatening my new beloved in-laws is not something about to let slide. She then begins to glow herself, and then her body begins to form armor around itself. Then, the devils appear to readying for a battle as magic circles form, and the leader readies for battle with demonic fires forming in her palms, and Roswis just remains still as her armor completes itself with her body concealed in shadows, and she just opens one of her palms and aims it at the sky. Then, a black circle forms around her palm as a large streak of dark energy shoots from her hand that immediately breaks into several pieces that the devils attempt to block, but the pieces maneuver around the area and mockingly turn around their bodies and arms without harming them until in the blink of an eye, the streaks shoot through all of them at varying spots, their torsos, limbs. And one is hit in the head. When it ends, all of the attackers fall to the ground. Looking around, Roswis sees only 3 of them alive, including the leader, who she walks up to and says now, I think you'll be coming with me. The leader coughs up blood and looks fearful as if she was looking into a vicious creature. In her special containment cell, Riaz wakes up alone in her bed, a nice single-person mattress with an especially cozy comforter, and stretches a bit while she opens her eyes more. She sleeps nude and proceeds to immediately look for her ragged clothing. Her special containment cell is a cube-like container that is like a small house resembling her former club room, with a bed, a bath, a desk with writing materials, a small bookshelf, and even a television with movies to watch. She goes to the desk where she normally places her clothing after washing it in her bathwater, but it is missing. She finds a simple white cloth with a note that reads. Dear Riaz. We thought that you'd like something more traditional, I'm sure you know what this is. Your old clothes have been disposed of, and this won't wear out as bad. Love Akeno. After reading the note, Riaz sighs a bit. A loincloth. I guess I have little choice then. She solemnly says to herself as she begins to tie the cloth around her waist and feels a slight digging sensation in her rear as she finishes tying it up with a small knot. Afterward, she looks at her shelf of books and finds one to read. Periodically, her books will be switched during cleanups, for which times she will be restrained and will also be monitored by her former peers. She looks for a minute and finds a book titled The Tale of Genji and proceeds to begin reading it. An hour passes and Ria's stomach begins to growl as she quietly says to herself, I hope today I get a nice quiet breakfast, I have to keep myself healthy. She somberly looks at her desk and sees the picture of her son on, pinned by a penhead. Almost as if luck is on her side, she hears approaching footsteps. She turns her head, wondering, is it you again, Akeno? Only to see a different black-haired woman, Rainer, holding a large tray and presses it towards the entrance of the cell as she holds up what appears to be some kind of red key with a dragon symbol on it. Here's your gruel, traitor bitch. Hope you enjoy it. She says with ire in her tone. Smirking a bit, Riaz sarcastically replies, what, Issei still not willing to have sex with you, Rainer? Angered, Rayer strikes at the cell, pointlessly hurting her own hand. I can't stand the humiliation anymore. I have prostrate myself in front of his brats and I got to deal with him treating me like a sex slave half the time without the sex. Glaring at Rainer, she explains Issei is not interested in sex slaves, you're more like a dog he keeps around because, unlike you, he has a conscience. Oh, and throwing you in her with nothing but a loincloth is having a conscience. Aren't you one of his wives and mother of one of his children? Rainer rebukes. Looking at the photo again, Riaz sheds a tear sadly saying I'll never forget the day he was born and held his tiny hand only to have him taken from me, taken by my husband. My heart snapped into pieces, her eyes welling up with tears thinking of this time. Sitting next to the cell door, Rainer sighs with frustration, I can't believe how low you've fallen, Gremory. Just like me, you were a maid, then he took your hand just like those 3 church sluts, and you had another one of his annoying brats. I can't even believe you ended up worse than me. Ignoring her words, Riaz simply takes her breakfast while saying I can't make you leave, but I will have no further conversations with you. She sits at her desk and begins eating her simple breakfast of a salad with fresh vegetables, a bowl of glistening white rice, fresh fried eggs, and a small side of sausage with a small pot of tea for drinking. She looks at the picture of her son again, and her tears begin falling more as she tries to remain silent. X, please don't think that I haven't thought of you every day since you were born. She thinks and reflects on that time before her and Issei's son was born. Some time ago. I'll never forget the day Issei captured Diodora Astra servants. I wasn't very familiar with them, only that I had seen them before. I was serving tea to Azazel to help him pass the time before Issei's next meeting with him. At the time, I had come to respect Issei, but I wouldn't say that I was attracted to him. Riaz pours Azazel his second cup of tea as he curiously looks at her in a maid uniform. With his usual calm smile, he asks how's it been serving the Tyrant Red Dragon. Can't be all sunshine and rainbows, I'd imagine. Peeping her grace, she put some sugar in his glass while answering I have a debt to pay for his magnanimity in the face of my transgression against him. It was how I felt. I have nothing but regret and anger at myself for harming Roswis. I had no idea it was Dragon Aura that had caused my sudden attack, but I still feel at fault. So I was willing to accept my punishment. But as he begins taking a sup, Akeno enters the room without knocking and immediately bows to Riaz. I'm sorry, head maid, Riaz, but Issei has requested your presence in the dungeon area. Nervously, Riaz responds, did I do something wrong, Akeno? But Akeno simply answers I don't know, Riaz. He just said he wants you down there as soon as possible. Not wanting to keep him waiting, Riaz immediately walks past Akeno, but as she walks by, she notices that Akeno has tied her maid apron rather sloppily and it appears to have been done hastily. But, she continues on her way to the dungeon area. I had suspicions then that Akeno was in a relationship, but I couldn't understand why at the time. Of course my immediate thought was Issei. Outside Hyoudou, there weren't many men in this manner at the time, there were a few butlers, but mostly maids. After exiting the room, Riaz walks down the hallways, passing by various maids and workers cleaning and deciding around this newer home. But, what catches Riaz's eye immediately is Asia, because she catches a glimpse of Issei's first lover, and she looks very different now. She appears a bit more muscular, and now wears a form-fitting bodysuit with green that covers her chest, groin, and shoulder area like a leotard with a rest black, gold boots with a gold gem in the base of the feet, gold bracers around her wrists, a gold neck brace, and she has 3 small jewels on her forehead with 2 green ones and a yellow one in the center of her forehead. And she has a fierce look on her face. But, as she stops to look for a moment, Asia looks towards Riaz with kind eyes and a gentle smile, kindly asking is something wrong, Riaz? Patching herself, Riaz bows politely, responding oh, I'm sorry for staring, Lady Asia. You just seem more determined than usual. Bashfully, Asia laughs a bit, explaining to Riaz I've been training lately, so I guess I've put on more muscle and maybe a more serious face. She then looks around and further says oh, I have to go, please continue with your day. Before she runs off and leaves Riaz alone again to continue her way. The building is going about as usual with the staff conducting their usual duties that Riaz observes on her way to Issei, even recognizing some stray devils, some who she's heard betrayed their masters, and she glares at them, slightly while walking towards her post. Within minutes, Riaz arrives in the dungeon area, mostly empty for the moment, aside from some prisoners, for various crimes against the Red Dragon's faction, and at a nearby cell, she sees Issei with an angry look on his face. But he looks towards Riaz and he smiles at her kindly. Politely, she bows to him, asking you wished for my presence, right, master? She asks formally. He nods, saying yeah, I need you to do something for me. And waves for her to come closer and she investigates the cell, seeing 3 devils behind the bars with a protection spell to prevent them from escaping. But it feels redundant because the devils all appear to be seriously injured. He simply asks take a look at these 3 and tell me if you recognize them. Riaz looks closely at the 3 and the queen catches her attention. I've seen this woman before. If I remember correctly, she is a servant of Diodora Astra, she explains. Issei looks at the woman and bluntly asks is that the truth? The woman opens her mouth saying yes, I am the queen of Lord Diodora Astra, heir to the. But she covers her mouth with her hands, despite the pain she is in, and her expression turns to utter terror. Yeah, if I had a name, then there was no way to get out of this. Issei says to the woman coldly. However, concerned, Riaz asks what did she do? Issei grips his hand into a fist. She tried to kidnap Rose, and she threatened my parents, and I'm not letting that fly. Hearing his words, Riaz compulsively says I agree with you. If someone threatened those who I think of as family, they'd feel my rage as well. Kneeling to Diodora's queen, Issei calms down and states look, there's no way out of this. Just tell what you were planning, why Diodora did this, and then I'm willing to make a deal. Diodora's queen simply shakes her head, much to Issei's annoyance, and he says, look, I'm not really into torture and stuff, but you're really forcing my hand here. He then snaps his fingers, and then Office appears. He looks at her, and annoyingly asks, hey, Office, can you get answers from these people? Office looks at Diodora's queen, who gets an intense fear at the mere sight of Office, without even knowing what she is. Office simply approaches the cell and goes through the bars like they don't even exist and raises her hand, and an infinity symbol appears above her palm. I don't very much like remembering what Office did to her, but it was very unpleasant. I only got a glimpse since Issei ordered me to follow him, since he didn't want to watch either. He may be considered a tyrant, but he's never been one to enjoy torture and interrogation, and I am grateful he considered my feelings as well. But I still remember the screaming as I exited the area with him. Issei and Riaz exit the area, while Office does this favor. Taking a breath and looking towards the ceiling, Issei has a look like he's thinking about what to do. Riaz just follows diligently and waits for his words. But he looks at her and says, hey, I think I'm about to ask a weird favor. To which Riaz just bows and waits. A few minutes later, sitting room. In an empty sitting room, Riaz has Issei's head on her lap as she cleans his ears gently, while he softly says, thanks for doing this, Riaz. It feels relaxing, and I didn't want to wake Irina from her nap. She simply says, I am a maid in your service, master. It's only natural to follow orders. But Issei just says, plainly, Riaz, I appreciate your commitment, but you can just be yourself here. You're not my slave or anything, and I don't want you to be humiliated. While cleaning his ear, Riaz just reminds him, Issei, I caused you trouble. I got Roswis caught into my personal problems, and even when I was your prisoner, you never did anything to harm me directly, and even called off my arranged marriage. If anything, I should consider you someone worthy of my trust, or even a friend now that I've said it aloud. Blushing a bit, Issei thinks on it for a moment and says, you know, Riaz. I was thinking that maybe it'd be good to have someone like you on our side, like not as a maid. Riaz pauses her cleaning and hears Issei's words, and his tone makes her hesitate, and she takes a moment to think. After finishing her breakfast, Riaz places her utensils on her leftover dishes and finishes her tea. She then brings the dishes over the opening on her cell and places them on a tray that leads outside but is barely big enough for the whole set. But when she looks outside, she still sees Rainer outside and she is sitting next to the wall of cell, looking agitated. Well, you finished your meal? She asks rudely. Riaz ignores the fallen angel and leaves her dishes for the maid to pick up, but before she does, Riaz takes a deep breath, looks at Rainer for a moment and as if she's doing her a kindness, admits, Rainer, even you somehow trick him into getting you pregnant, your situation will never change. All you'll be is Office's whipping girl for the rest of your feeble existence. Snapping back, Rainer conjures a holy spear out of impulse and stabs at the wall next to Ria's face, but she doesn't flinch as the holy spear shatters against the wall, not even making a mark. Against the wall, Riaz gazes upon Rainer's fierce expression as she shouts, shut up. But, nonchalantly, Ria's gaze moves somewhere else as she glares at a person who is approaching from the stairs as their footsteps become louder as they approach, but Riaz recognizes the legs. Standing up and immediately putting a sweet smile, Rainer closes her eyes and has rosy cheeks, like some kind of doll, as she bows politely. Approaching from the stairs is Asia, and she's wearing her bodysuit she began wearing years ago and has a calm expression as she descends the stairs. She looks towards Rainer and smiles at her, making Rainer seemingly nervous as her body begins to shiver a bit. Riaz looks at Asia and glares at her like she did Akeno and just sarcastically asks, are you here to check me out again? But Asia shakes her head, answering no, but that loincloth Akeno chose does suit you. You even braided it. Shrugging it off, Riaz looks at Asia as she is, thinking every single time I've seen her, I can't believe she was once called meek or delicate. She is without a single doubt the most terrifying woman I know. I wasn't sure of it until that day. Years ago. It was just after Issei learned Diodora Astaroth was involved in threatening his parents and loved ones. He began demanding answers from him. It was justly so because that attack was completely unwarranted, especially when we were still trying to establish relations with each other. But it took some time before we could even get a proper meeting, months in fact, but he wanted to keep things amicable in the meantime. Riaz serves to Issei, who is meeting with Ajuka Beelzebub with Roswis at her husband's side, while she tells the great Satan Lord Beelzebub what we want is immediate reprimanding of the devil Diodora Astaroth. Ajuka pulls out a chess piece and begins fiddling with it in his hand and looks as though he is thinking and waits for a minute before answering, I understand your indignation, but we simply don't have sufficient proof at this time that he was directly involved in that incident. Upset, Issei states, dude, that woman we have in our prison said he sent her here. However, he immediately replies yes, she may have, however, Diodora reported those missing servants as strays days before the attack happened. Clenching his hand into a fist, Issei looks like he's about to smash the table, but Ijuka further explains what if he had been upset and those servants of his acted on his behalf without him ordering them. Would you not act if one of your wives was insulted or hurt regardless of the consequences? Issei unclenches his hand, remembering his actions up to now, calmly answering it's true. I have acted on impulse myself. Asia, Irina, Zenobia, and even Rose. I acted quickly with them and turning them, but I don't have a single regret about this. Ijuka smiles and nods, but explains Issei, we will look into it, but if you feel so strongly about it, we'll send in Serafal for negotiations to talk compensations. I do believe we owe something for the trouble at the least. But as he says this, Ijuka then looks at Issei and then Roswas, asking however, I would actually like to propose an idea myself. Intrigued a bit, Issei puts on a calm face and waits expectantly as Ijuka explains, I'm actually very intrigued by the establishment of your faction, and I've heard that Michael is trying to create his own new system for angels. But I would actually like to create a system for your faction similar to our own evil pieces. But Roswas intervenes, stating, but what it sounds like so far is this would be for you, not us. Ijuka looks at her, accepting yes, it is mostly for a vanity project, I'll admit, but this will in fact benefit you all even more. He then proposes I want to create a new reincarnation system for your faction. It'll add more numbers to you, and it'll create a system to which we can compete with, friendly of course. Issei looks rather anxious, but he turns to Roswas, asking what do you think, Rose? She looks speechless herself, answering it sounds too good to be true, but if that's the case, we could amass a whole army of dragon soldiers. But when she says that, she asks Ijuka but say if you did, what's to stop us from invading the underworld? Ijuka puts down his chess piece and bluntly answers there isn't, but that would have been the same answer for Odin when he gave you those Valkyries, and it would also be the same for Azazel when he gave you those 3 fallen angels. But, I don't believe you will, at least if we continue to amicable with each other. Ijuka was so calm and collected, but I wasn't sure of his seriousness myself. Despite his position, he's not the pinnacle of a figurehead for the most part. But I remember the uncertainty Issei felt. Especially when it came to getting Diodora punished for his actions, but Ijuka was correct, at least on the surface. After some more consideration and talking with Roswas, Issei looks at Ijuka and says we'll consider the offer, but in the meantime, I want your people to investigate this Diodora asshole. Ijuka picks his piece, nods, and then leaves without another word spoken, but does place a piece of paper with a magic circle on it before leaving the residence. Roswas leaves on her own after taking the paper, while Riaz and Issei leave the room after her. They leave to the dining area where Issei sees Asia and Irina eating lunch together, as the former exorcist has a bowl of soup with a few slices of bread, and Asia has a steak with a green salad with some kind of white drink. Issei grabs a bowl of soup and sits next to his expecting wife and kindly asks, how are you doing today? Irina puts down her spoon, looks down at her swollen belly, and blushes while saying it's gonna happen soon, darling, I can feel it. Issei begins rubbing her stomach and feels some movements with Irina putting her hands on his, excited for the big day soon. They then start kissing while Asia watches enviously with Issei showing Irina affection, but she stands up and leaves with Riaz following her to give the two privacy. But outside the dining area, Riaz and Asia walk together. Asia, concerningly asks Riaz you were with Issei during that meeting, right? Riaz, respectfully answering yes, the master was having a meeting with Ijuka Beelzebub as we discussed for today. But Asia's expression becomes concerned looking while she asks are they going to do something about Diodora? I had to tell her what happened. But personally, given the attitude shown by Diodora, I had little doubt that he was responsible, considering how quickly he denounced his own servants. Asia clenches her hand and says, with a fierce look in her eyes, Issei declared that we'd take care of these things, and yet we can't even stop one devil who threatens our family because of his status. She then looks at Riaz, remembering not counting you, Riaz. You at least had the courage to admit your guilt. Lowering her head, Riaz confesses Asia Hyoudou, I will never, ever, forgive myself for that. Then, she speaks as a noble herself but please, don't judge all devils and certainly not the nobles based on one ill-mannered young man. Lord Beelzebub was just acting according to procedures. Even if we don't like it, and I suspect he wasn't happy to tell us what he did. Asia looks at Riaz, her eyes turning sorrowful, and states come with me for a second. As they start walking, not speaking the entire time. Asia, in this moment, treated me like a friend, I felt like. She looked at me, not with sympathy, not with disrespect, and not with hate. Asia leads Riaz to an unfamiliar room that looks new. There appears to be computers, a silver pad, a few Valkyries, and even offices in the room, looking at Asia the moment she enters the room. Without much thought, Asia tells Riaz, I'm starting my own division in our growing army. I want to test the power and abilities of chosen Valkyries. If they don't the criteria, I don't get rid of them, I encourage them to improve and try again. Curious, Riaz looks towards and sees 4 Valkyries wearing a similar bodysuit that Asia was wearing the other day, but she is wearing normal clothes now, like her old nun attire, but with a dragon on both arms and the back dot, and one Valkyrie is naked, on the floor gasping for air. Upon seeing her, Asia immediately puts on a look of worry. I'm sorry, Lady Asia, I'm so very sorry I can't do it, she says in a sorrowful tone with tears running down her face. But Asia just summons her sacred gear, Umbra Fountain, and then heals the Valkyrie's body, noticing her shoulders are dislocated and her body is abnormally red from physical stress. After healing her, Asia just looks her in the face, saying it's alright. You can try again later when you're ready for it. Why don't you just go back and get some sleep? The Valkyrie faces the floor, her tears still flowing, saying thank you, Lady Asia, I won't let you down. Coming back to Riaz, Asia just smiles and asks Riaz, would you like to accompany me on a little trip? A little surprised, but she wonders why me? Wouldn't it you prefer someone with more of Issei's trust? Thinking while looking up, Asia politely answers well, I think I'd rather have Karoka, Rose, and the others here for when Irina or Zenobia give birth. I wouldn't want anyone to miss that. Looking towards the machines, Riaz feels intrigue about their functions, as well as what happened to that naked Valkyrie. But, Riaz looks a bit surprised as Asia begins to undress, revealing something she wasn't expecting. Asia, who once had a very delicate frame, now has a bit of muscle, but nothing crazy, and she strips completely naked and begins walking towards the silver pad and turns around facing towards Riaz as she just smiles at the personal maid. Okay, everyone, start up the machine. She states as some Valkyries, the ones wearing the suits begin to operate the computers as a circular object appears above Asia, with what appears to be a mix of colors from her original suit, as it begins to rotate as it lowers onto her body, wrapping around her as she stands straight, not flinching, as material wraps around her body. She raises her arms taking them through the form-fitting material around her arms, and it forms completely around her body, and as it finishes, she rips her feet from the bottom, her bodysuit complete again as she walks to Riaz. She explains the suits are for monitoring heartbeats, injuries, blood flow, temperature, and breathing, as well as amplifying muscle growth, and adds protection, but requires physical dexterity to wear, which is what that Valkyrie failed at. But as she gets closer, Asia grabs Riaz's hands together and asks Riaz, would you please help me with this? I don't Issei involved in this. But Riaz, unclear, replies Aussie Lady Asia, what are you asking of me? Her voice a bit nervous from the implications. Asia closes her eyes, takes a breath, and explains I want to have a private meeting with Diodora Astaroth and I want you to come as a witness. Not as a maid, but as a noble, but I want you to come with me of your own decision because of this. Dropping the formality, Riaz quickly replies Asia, I can't come if I'm going as a representative of the Gremory clan, I could. But Asia interrupts her no, I'm not asking you to fight, nor am I asking you to do anything. I just want you as a witness. But, thinking on it some more, Riaz looks at Asia's suit and proclaims I'll only do it in exchange for the secrets for that outfit. It could be an exchange of favors and I'm still taking a risk with this. A smile forms on Asia's face and her tone feels peaceful as she says thank you Riaz. But then Asia asks a little more flirtatiously do you want to try it? Riaz blushes a bit, saying so that would require me to strip completely naked, correct? Asia nods, but Riaz feels a desire to try it, so, without much thought, Riaz approaches the silver pad after undressing from her maid uniform. Asia then looks at the operators again and says how about red and black? She requests as the operators adjust as Riaz looks above as the black remains the same, but the rest is red, compared to Asia's 3 colors and accessories, making her look more like a leader. Riaz stands still for a moment as the spiral descends upon her head, but as it lowers around her shoulders, she begins to feel a strain as the tight material wraps around her bare flesh and she falls to her knees. Riaz strains and can't stand, saying this is a lot harder than I believed. She begins to let a slightly pained groan, but she begins to try to stand. The Valkyrie at a computer states Lady Asia, the subject is starting to become crushed under the force of the system, we should. But Asia defiantly says no, she can do it. Riaz strains more as the spiral is barely below her shoulders, but she looks at Asia, whose expression only expresses belief and kindness, so she stands up and the suit is now formed up to her wrists and upper torso. Riaz clenches her hands into fists and struggles some more until it reaches her hands, but she falls to all fours, but the suit still forms around her lower body and hands, but her fingers and hands are stuck. Asia raises her hand and cheers, announcing come on, Riaz, you're almost there. Riaz, feeling her words, pulls her hands up as the material won't tear, and she pulls and pulls her hands until the material finally separates, fully covering her hands. She manages to get back to one knee and stands up as she forcefully lifts her legs and pulls her feet out, but her face has sweat running down it and she is taking deep breaths. She almost falls over, but Asia runs up and catches her. At a computer, a Valkyrie announces the subject's heartbeat is escalated, her breathing labored, and her temperature is increased, but not to alarming levels yet. Riaz stands on her own and inspects her new form-fitting bodysuit and comments, "This outfit is very tight, but it feels very light, as if it was my own skin, but sturdier." Nodding, Asia explains, "It was Office's idea. She based it on the armor worn by female exorcists, but we wanted to make it better in every way." Riaz checks her reflexes and grips as she looks back at Asia and formally declares, "Asia, you have fulfilled your promise, now I will fulfill mine, not as your servant, but as the next head of the House of Gremory." Asia extends her hand, which Riaz accepts as they shake hand in agreement, with the promise that this mission will not involve assault on Diodora Asterith. Asia and Riaz, who is wearing her maid uniform over her new suit, as the two make their way to the exit portal to leave. Asia looks nervous as she has some sweat running down her face as she turns around and sees the servants and soldiers going about their day. Riaz looks at her and concerningly says, "Asia, it isn't too late to back out, if you don't feel comfortable, I can call off the meeting." But Asia shakes her head, replying, "We need leave quickly, I won't hesitate." Her face and tone ever serious. Without much more delay, Riaz and Asia both exit the realm and find themselves back into the previous manor where she and Issei started living together. Then, the two remove their concealing clothing and reveal their bodysuits under, with Riaz now having a silver neckband and silver wristbands that cover the back of her hands and part of her lower arm, along with a new stiletto-like feet on her outfit. These were attached after she put the suit on for a more distinct look. After this, Riaz immediately makes a magic circle for teleporting herself and Asia to a new location in the underworld, per the agreement with Diodora. But before she finishes, Riaz looks around and makes sure she and Asia are alone. With a concerned look, Riaz asks Asia, "Can I ask you something personal?" Without hesitation, Asia smiles sweetly and responds, "Sure, as long as it's not too personal." Taking a breath, Riaz halts her actions, turns to Asia, and she worryingly asks, "Are Issei and Akeno seeing each other?" Tilting her head, Asia replies, "What do you mean?" Turning to face her completely straight, she elaborates, "Akeno is my best friend and someone I trust with my life, but lately, she seems different. She seems really close with the Tyrant Red Dragon, her clothes are applied sloppily after tending to him, and she doesn't talk to me much lately, so I thought you'd have answers." Blushing a bit, Asia puts her hand to her face and has a flushed look, explaining, "Well, I really wouldn't know. Issei and have WLLL. We've made love many times since we started living together. I've also been intimate with Zenobia, Irina, and… well, there was one thing with Kuro." Suddenly she becomes flustered, shouting, "No, what am I saying?" Riaz just turns around with her face cracking a bit of smile at her fluster, but doesn't chuckle and goes back to making her circle while thinking, "I guess Asia wouldn't know what he's doing every hour of every day, but I have to learn the truth somehow." After finishing the magic, Riaz and Asia warp to a new location, the meeting place with Diodora. After a red flash of light, Asia and Riaz appear to where the meeting is to take place. They arrive near a lake with a rather small manor is placed. This place is probably a small property that the Asterith family owns. "I think he chose this place because he'd be less suspicious here." Riaz explains while Asia nods as the two make their way to the entrance. As they make their way to the doorway, which is 2 doors, they open with a single woman, dressed in a robe, standing at the doorway, greeting the two politely with a "Boy master, Diodora has been expecting you both. Allow me to guide you." Without hesitation, Asia and Riaz enter the manor as the door shut after they enter, and the woman just walks, leading the way, without any words. Riaz and Asia also fall silent, with Asia having a nervous expression on her face. The silent movements are at an end after going through a couple of corridors as the woman simply says, "Please, enjoy yourselves." Before arriving to a final door and Asia can smell a pleasant aroma. The door opens as Asia and Riaz stand side by side and see a large table with plenty of food on it, from fine meats to gourmet soups, and only 3 chairs, one in front, one on the side, and one at the other end, with Diodora sitting in it as he smiles, seeing Asia. "Thank you so very much for finally coming to meet with me, Asia," he politely says while inviting the two to sit and dine. It's only the 3 of them in the room, but Asia and Riaz just accept his courtesy and take seats with Asia at the farthest seat from Diodora. But without much delay, Asia comes out saying, "Diodora, we've come to make a sudden request of you." Looking politely still, he just says, "Please, why not dine for a moment and then we'll discuss business." Asia looks down and sees a wine glass with water in it, and she calmly takes a sip, but her demeanor remains nervous a bit as she eats a little food, while Diodora seems to be watching her while mostly ignoring Riaz, who is simply observing. After a few minutes, and Asia trying to eat, to be polite, she immediately reiterates, "We need to talk about your servants attacking Roswas months ago." But his smile fades as he sighs with a frown on his face while taking a sip of wine, replying that was a very regrettable day. "I didn't order them to do anything. I just arrived back and then they were gone after they saw what you did too well, you should remember." Asia looks a bit guilty, remembering that did take on his knight's arms during that meeting, and she apologetically says, "It was wrong of me to mutilate your servant like that, and I'll pay compensation for that, if you so wish." But he just waves his hand, stating, "No, I was acting out of line, and the situation that occurred was my fault. I shouldn't have goaded that catwoman at the meeting." Taking a breath, Asia now looks a bit calmer and happily says, "As long as you've said it, I'll accept your apology." But then Asia remembers something that Kuroka said during the previous meeting and she asks, "Oh, I wonder, what did Kuroka mean by Mr. Nun Fetish?" Suddenly, his demeanor seems sorrowful as he explains with a serious tone and look, "My servants are exclusively former nuns and holy women from the church. They were cast out and were deemed traitors. When I learned this, I couldn't sit by and leave them, so I decided to take them in as part of peerage, and they in turn became loyal to me. Because of this, I've been occasionally seen as a deviant by others, but I simply want nothing but to give a home and a new reason to live." Asia's hands tremble, and she says to herself, "But Riaz can hear her, it's just like with me, Irina, and Zenobia. Issei took us when we're cast aside, and he gave us all love and a home. Diodora must be the same, so that's why his servants attacked us, because of how much they care for him, just like what I'm doing now for Issei." But as Riaz looks over Diodora, she sees a smile on his face, but it looks like one of confidence, but she thinks something seems off about this. Issei only took in 3 at most and 2 of them he knew before that, but Diodora had a full peerage from my understanding. Then, she asks him, "This may seem like a strange question, but how would you know about all these women being cast out?" To which he quickly explains, "I've done quite a bit of traveling from country to country. I take interests in church affairs for territorial reasons, and I look into rumors, and unfortunately, I happen to hear about some rather discriminatory situations, like with your case, Asia." Asia seems taken back by his words, but Riaz can see wonder in her eyes, being taken in by what he's saying, so she concerningly remarks, "But in Asia's case, were you not the direct cause of her exile?" His body language shows agitation as he taps his fingers to the table, but Diodora remains composed in her speaking as he calmly answers, "Yes, unfortunately, I am not always in complete control over my circumstances. In Asia's case, I was possibly getting a little over my head in the church activities where she was, and I was attacked for it." Ria's eyes, showing distrust towards Diodora, focus back on Asia, who looks as though she's thinking. After this moment, no more words about what happened are spoken, and casual engagement proceeds with no major information being discussed. After the meal, Diodora requests I actually have more things to discuss with Asia, so I'd very much like for her to stay a little longer to indulge my selfish request. He seems much calmer, but Riaz keeps her eyes on him. But, seemingly playing it safe, Asia thinks for a moment, but then reiterates, "Okay, but Riaz has to remain with me. She is my witness after all." Nodding, Diodora claps his hands and 2 more maids appear while he says, "Please, take some time and wait for me in the sitting room. I'll have tea prepared and will be down after gathering my thoughts." Asia and Riaz both stand and leave the room while following the maids to the sitting room. The room itself is standard fare for a manor with some couches, chairs, a couple of tables, and a fireplace with a window that shows outside in the underworld. Asia and Riaz take seats next to each other at a table. But Asia looks deep in thought. After a minute, Riaz sighs and softly tells Asia, "I'm sure you noticed, but I don't think he's telling you everything." Putting her hands to her knees, Asia grips her hands into fists and nervously responds, "I don't know what to think. I can't imagine that he." She seemingly reminisces Issei was just like that, he. But Riaz interrupts, reminding her, "From what I heard, Issei didn't approach you because of your former affiliation. Didn't he just care about you because you're you?" Her tone turning sad, she just says, "Riaz, I think I made a mistake coming here. I'm just so nervous that Issei will be mad at me." Putting her hand on Asia's shoulder, she just says, "Asia Hyoudou, I can honestly tell you that Issei is very smitten with you, even I can tell that." Once she hears that, Asia blushes, her cheeks looking like rose petals, as she says, in a rather embarrassed tone, "I have no doubts about that. He still caresses me just as lovingly as the first time we made love. I still remember that night when he held me tightly, held my hand, and kissed while we oh my." Her face turning the brightest shade of red while Riaz blushes from hearing this. But, after taking a few more deep breaths, Asia smacks her face a couple of times, declaring right, I have to believe that Issei believes in me. Riaz giggles a bit as Asia's fluster, but feels a bit more respect for the dragon. A minute later, the two hear a voice saying Issei's belief is unflappable when it comes his personal females, or wives if you'd put it. The two look above and spot Office, casually floating above them. Asia, suddenly concerned, asks, Office, why are you here? Office simply floats down, sits on the couch next to Asia. She produces a small piece of chocolate, kind of shaped like a shoe, and mentions maybe peanut butter wasn't the best choice before she puts the final bites into her mouth and swallows it. Looking a bit bewildered, Asia comments, Office, why not build a personal candy shop in our home? I'm sure you'd get more sweets that way. Emotionlessly, Office replies, it wasn't about that today. I was just testing something. Looking at Office, Riaz wonders, Miss Office, do you know anything about Diodora Asterisk? Office fiddles with her fingers, popping them while plainly answering some things, but he doesn't interest me like you do. Curious, she asks, what do you mean by that? While continuing to act unassuming, Office simply replies, I'm interested in breeding you with Issei. I also want him to breed with a fallen angel as well. Blushing a bit, Riaz puts on an irritated look, stating, well, that was rather blunt and rude. To which the infinite dragon just remarks, feelings don't matter to me. A dragon being born with the power of destruction would be very desirable to see. Of course, if Issei was a different type of man, I'd suggest your mother if you weren't an option. Looking offended, Riaz just embarrassingly states, I cannot believe you even said that out loud. Despite the rather embarrassing situation, Asia sits at Riaz's opposite side and manages to get through her fluster by asking Riaz, does the idea of joining us upset you? Still blushing, Riaz calms down and calmly responds, no, it doesn't, but the idea just isn't possible to me. If I join with the Tyrant Red Dragon, then it would appear that I'm attempting to curry favor with the Tyrant Red Dragon through underhand means. But Asia just asks, what's wrong with that? Riaz, I see how you look at him and how much he cares for us, the amount of effort he gives, and the ambition he has. I think that if you joined us and bore a child with him, it'd only strengthen our relations with the Devil faction. Stunned by her behavior, Riaz can't help but tell Asia, I cannot believe how committed you are to this. Doesn't the idea of your husband having multiple wives bother you in any way? Does it not hurt you to see him show such affection to the others? Shaking her head, Asia sweetly answers, not at all. I am jealous that Zenobia and Irina are having his children before me, but we'll keep trying. I just want to help Issei achieve our dream. No more devils relying on contracts, no more fallen angel deception, and no more angel cowardice. We just want to put an end to it, and we could really use your help, Riaz. Riaz suddenly feels her heart beating in her chest, and her mind races through thoughts of everything that's happened up to now, her meeting with Issei where she nearly killed Roswas, his imprisoning of her, helping her with her arranged marriage, the affection he's shown others who have lost their homes, his desire to reform all the factions, the length he goes for his loved ones. And his continued kindness to others despite being called an evil tyrant. She thinks, do I really want this? Am I truly considering joining them? Marriage? Children? Is this why? Has Akeno already made this decision? Thinking about what Issei is planning to do, and given Akeno's past, Riaz can't help but empathize her friend's feelings right now. Akeno lost her mother because she was the daughter of a fallen angel, and Issei promised to end that kind of discrimination, so I really can't blame her for wishing it. Her beating heart doesn't cease, and she looks at Asia with a look showing resolve, and she is about to answer. When? Someone is peeping on us. Office Stokely says, looking towards the doorway, seeing it crept very slightly open, and Diodora reveals himself without much hesitation. He bows while apologetically saying, I'm sorry for being rude, but I'm sure you can tell that I am a rather prudent and thought I should wait for your conversation to end before entering. Without much happening, he takes a seat opposite of Asia and Riaz, now noticing Office floating in the air and pouring herself some tea with plenty of honey in it. But before Diodora can say anything, Riaz looks at him, distrust present in her gaze, but she avoids glaring or making a sour expression, maintaining her grace despite her previous fluster. But Asia plainly asks, hey, I want to ask a question, if that'd be alright. Smiling, he just says, of course, I'd be happy to indulge your question, it'd only be fair. She remembers that first meeting and asks him, during our last meeting, you mentioned that there were rumors about Issei being married to Miss Serafal, so I have to ask, where did you hear that from? Riaz notices this as well and comments, yes, as far as I know, the dealings between Lady Leviathan and Issei have been always talked about as professional. Something seems to catch Diodora off as he hesitates for a moment, as if he's thinking, and he takes a moment to respond, but he calmly answers, I don't recall. But, thinking on it, it was rather crass of me to even closely believe that. He clears his throat for a moment and then adds, now, about what I wanted to ask. But before can't speak, Office lowers to the ground, interrupting him. She looks at Asia and says, "Oh, I forgot to mention, but Irina has gone into labor." Causing Asia's eyes to widen excitedly. She immediately stands up, practically shouting, "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" She looks at Riaz and yells, "We have to go right now, Riaz. I can't miss this." She darts for the door with Riaz, but Diodora looks a bit annoyed. "Hey, I still want to speak, Asia," he says as she is about to get to the door, seemingly ignoring his words. He then states, with a more aggressive tone, "I said, I'm not done talking with you, Asia." He then raises his hand and a circle appears on the door, preventing Asia from touch it and lightly burning her hand. She looks over at Diodora, who has an annoyed look on his face, and she can tell he isn't happy, but she wonders what he's about to say or do next. Asia looks at Diodora, her face showing a bit of unease. "Please, I want to see Irina give birth," she says with a bit worry in her voice. Putting back a polite demeanor, Diodora says, "Asia, I've got out of my way to arrange this meeting without invoking the ire of other nobles. I may not get another chance to have this meeting for a while." But, thinking quickly, Riaz simply remarks, "I find it funny that you have a seal on that door that can burn Asia's hand, even with her suit on." She looks at him with contempt, sternly addressing, "I have a feeling that you were planning on Asia rejecting your request." However, Asia looks at her hand and sees a scorch mark on her suit which quickly fades away and her umbra fountain to heal the burn, but she says, "Riaz, I'm sure it's only because he was being cautious. Zenobia herself has told me that she sometimes cannot hold back her violence around others." Looking at her, Riaz can only relay, "Asia, something hasn't been sitting right with me since we came here." Now looking angry, Diodora remarks, "As the woman who attacked the Tyrant Red Dragon's wife and served as his sex slave for the last few months. I'll bet he's already turned you into a traitor." Ria's anger shows clear with a crimson aura surrounds her body and she looks at him with apparent murderous intent, stating, "I don't like your attitude towards me, Diodora Astareth." Then reprimanding him, "Issei has not touched me in any sexual way, I am by no means a traitor and I am certainly no one's slave." While it appears this little confrontation is about to escalate, Asia takes a breath, looks at Office, who isn't the least bit interested in this moment, and asks her, "Office, is Riaz correct about him?" Office yawns a bit, stretches, and bluntly answers, "He wanted to see you in despair, as it gives him pleasure. I don't know why, and I don't care." Casually pulling out another piece of candy that has a peculiar shape, like a half of a head, and bites into it. Rather than appearing angry, Diodora seems to drop all pretense and appears to be a little more forward, approaching Asia, seemingly threatening Riaz as he says, "I don't think many of our peers would find it appropriate if you considered joining that filthy dragon's harem." He then grabs Asia by the wrist, she seems motionless and looking to the ground. As he says to her, "And I don't think Asia is in any position to leave me now." He lifts her face with her other hand and just states, "I want that compensation you said you'd give me." Her face lights up with anger, giving Diodora a slightly nervous look as her free hand turns into a fist and her smirks at the idea of her hitting him, but a loud POW echoes as her first collides with his face and an immense force is felt from the impact, and in a rather impressive display of strength, Diodora soars through the room and even crashes into the wall at the other end, breaking it and flying towards the ground and near the small lake. After landing, he feels his face and he feels a dent and it's bleeding. Asia appears at the hole in the wall and her expression is not one that anyone has ever seen, one of fury. She jumps out of the mansion and begins approaching him as he sees the silhouette of a dragon appearing around her body as she angrily asks, "Were all of those things you told me a lie? Did you trick those poor innocent girls into becoming your servants?" He stands up and wipes his face, thinking that it's absurd that this woman is Asia Argento, the delicate maiden he knew before this meeting. Even at that meeting, she didn't seem that strong. However, Diodora tries to maintain his composure, answering Asia, "I'm just into rough things, I swear I didn't have anything to do with their exiles." But she doesn't seem to be buying it, thinking further about his behavior and his fixation, and she demands to know that day, "How did you get injured?" He backs up a bit, but he has a fierce look in his eyes, "The little bitch thinks she's superior to me. Well, I know better than that. Gremory won't harm me, and I'm only protecting myself." Not liking the silence, Asia reaffirms, also demanding, "Did you ruin those other girls' lives? Did you force them into caring about you?" Riaz watches from the side, not wanting to interfere, but also listening to their words as they converse. Diodora looks around, as if someone is supposed to be near, but he confidently admits to Asia, "Fine, you want me to admit, then yes. Those girls were just like your situation with the Tyrant Red Dragon." She stops in her tracks, clenching both of her hands into fists, furiously questioning, "What did you say?" Diodora mockingly states, "Come on, Asia. Issei took you in at your lowest and you even slept with him because he just happened to show an ounce of kindness. Those other two sluts of his were church dogs that he took in were just flunkies the church exiled and declared monsters. The catgirl is a stray that he took in, and that reject Valkyrie was so desperate for love that she took the first chance she got. You can't honestly tell me he's only thinking of his own pleasures. Asia grits her teeth in anger, remembering all the love and compassion that Issei has showed her, as she now has a green aura around her body that irradiates with power, making Diodora a bit more anxious, and she indignantly states, "Don't ever compare Issei to you. He loves me, and I love him. He loves Irina, he loves Zenobia, he loves Rose, and he loves Kuroka. He cares about everyone in our faction, and he would never, ever, intentionally hurt someone so deeply. What you did to those poor girls, it must have been like tearing off their arms and legs and leaving them to be eaten by wild animals. That despair is something that no one should ever have to go through." She tears up at thinking about Irina, and Zenvoya Irina tried to kill herself because she couldn't take it and Issei pulled her out of it. Now, she's happier than she's ever been and giving birth to a beautiful child as we speak, and I want to be there. Riaz walks to Asia's side with her arms crossed and asks her, "Asia, if you continue as things are now, you won't be able to save face in front of nobility, possibly indefinitely." Asia simply remarks, "I don't care." But she appears uneasy about engaging in violence as her aura subsides as she calms down a bite but looks at Diodora and warns him, "I don't ever want to see you again, and if you try to do anything like this to anyone, I will be back." Insulted, Diodora begins to charge a spell and rebukes, "How dare you threaten me, dragon bitch." His magic circles have a strange symbol in them, as Riaz takes an observation as he fires a barrage of red arrows that fly towards Asia, and they hit her face, cutting it a bit, and Riaz moves out of the way as the rest of the arrows miss their mark. Asia can feel a throbbing pain in her face as a red substance leaks from her wounds, and it feels intense, like a hot iron rod on bare skin. Quickly, she uses her Umbra Fountain to heal the wound, but it takes a bit longer. Now, showing his true colors, Diodora opens up both palms as a smirk forms on his face, and his magic circles appear in both hands with a strange symbol on them. Riaz looks, trying to figure out what he's doing, but Asia begins running towards him, despite the apparent danger. She thinks about being brave, and Diodora brings his palms together and fires a bolt of energy from the circles, but she manages to quickly jump above it, but Diodora smirks a bit more as the bolt diverts and moves upwards, shocking Asia as she writhes in pain for a moment and falls to the ground, unable to move. Approaching a little, he remains a slight distance, saying, "Don't think I've forgotten about that little trick you used to melt off one of my servant's arms. So it won't work on me." Riaz flies appears between them, her face showing disdain, as she asks Diodora Astereth, "Are you engaging with illegal magic practices?" To which he casually puts his hand to his hip, proclaiming, "Wow, I guess that being the Tyrant Red Dragon slave made you ignorant." He opens up his palm again to show the circle with a strange symbol, explaining anti-dragon magic, made to combat the Tyrant Red Dragon and his little sex slaves. Without much thought, Riaz immediately asks who arranged for that. "We're supposed to be on good terms with them." Apparently even beepier, Diodora rebukes, "I don't have single reason to tell a traitor about my little secrets. I suggest that you leave Asia with me, and you can simply crawl to your brother and ask for his help." Finally having enough, Riaz generates magic and attacks Diodora, causing him to look annoyed as he puts a barrier that he uses to block her attacks. With a look of livid on her face, Riaz states, "I have had enough of this attitude." She assists Asia in standing up and declares, "Asia, I've decided to take you up on your idea, and I'll talk to Issei about marriage when we go back." Asia turns her head to look at Riaz, but suddenly, Asia's beautiful green eyes turn to slits as smiles sweetly, but it feels like Riaz is looking into the eyes of someone different, and without a word, she begins to charge at Diodora with speed that seems faster than before, like she's getting a boost without the call-out like with the boosted gear. Seeing this not much of a threat, Diodora charges up another bit of his new magic, but Riaz immediately launches a spell at him, forcing him to put his barrier up to protect himself. Not seeing an opportunity, and with Asia closing in, he tries to use his magic to attack, but Riaz is ready to stop him, and with her own magic, without much more time left, he tries to think of another move, quickly, but within moment, Asia punches through the barrier weakened from Riaz's magic, and then Diodora feels an intense fear as Asia then immediately punches him in the stomach. The pain so intense surges through his abdomen that he falls to his knees and even throws up a bit, along with some blood spurting from his mouth. He takes a moment to catch his wind back before looking at Asia and seeing her eyes himself. "How are you, Asia Argento?" he asks in disbelief. Only for her to reply, "I'm not Asia Argento, I'm Asia Hyoudou now." Her dragon aura rises again, making Diodora fumble backwards as he tries to crawl away. But Asia just sees him pitifully cower from her, but all she can think is, "I should hate him. But I don't want to. He's just so." Shameless, Riaz says, joining at Asia's side, continuing, "I can't believe the heir to the house of Astereth would stoop so low as to cower from someone he thought of as a plaything." Riaz looks at Asia again, curious to see if her eyes are normal, but when she looks at her now, she only sees sadness, almost as if she's heartbroken from seeing Diodora in such a state. All Asia can say is Riaz, let's go back and talk to Issei. I don't want to be here anymore. Seeing the more gentle Asia come back, it feels like she was possessed by something in those moments, and her anger was just a product of that, and it just pains her to hurt others despite what she says. The two women turn around to leave, and Diodora opens his palm and quietly starts up his magic, while the two have their backs turned, but before he can, Office appears and disrupts his magic with a flick of her finger. Riaz and Asia turn around, sensing Office as she looks towards the disgraced devil noble. Plainly, she says to him now that Riaz Gremory is interested in marriage, her safety is within my interest. She points her finger at Diodora, and her look seems a little colder as she tells him your existence, however, seems to hinder my interest. Curious and a little worried, Riaz asks the dragon god what do you plan to do with him. Office points her finger at Diodora, like a gun, as she explains I was reading some of Issei's books, I believe they were called manga, and there was one thing that caught my interest. Her finger begins to glow pink, and she adds this pink creature, he could turn people into candy. Diodora's eyes open wide as a pink beam is shot at him as he screams for a moment as his body is enveloped by a pink light, and after a moment, his whole body begins to change color to a light brown color, and within a moment, a pink cloud forms around him as a soft landing sound is heard. When the cloud finally dissipates, a small brown object is on the ground as Office walks over to pick it up. She lifts it up, walks over to Riaz, and calmly asks, would you like a bite? She shows Riaz a piece of chocolate that looks like Diodora, his face showing agony and fear. Shocked, she asks did you actually turn him into chocolate? She shrugs a bit and replies I just wanted to see if it would taste good, I turned the rest of servants into candy, except the ones in our home. She then casually tosses the piece of candy into her mouth as she chews it for a few moments, as Asia and Riaz can only watch with shock and even a little horror as Office swallows the candy, then commenting nougat was the best choice by far. Before disappearing. The entire events of what happened takes a moment to sink in, but Riaz suddenly remembers oh, Asia, didn't you want to be there when the baby was born? Asia suddenly shocks back to reality as the two then instantly make their way back to their home. Manor. Asia and Riaz arrive back, without paying mind to their clothing, as they quickly make way to the master bedroom where they expect the others to be. Surely enough, Asia barges into the room and sees Kuroka, Roswis, Zenobia who is still very much waiting for her turn, Irina's father Tauji, Office, and Issei himself, as they stand before the master bed with Irina lying in it, her hair undone as she breathes in and out. Issei holds her hand, encouraging her and comforting her. The doctor, who they've brought into their group, attends to her, talking about how well she's doing. The labor has been going on for at least a couple of hours now. Asia approaches the bed kindly tells Irina you're doing so well, just keep at it Irina. To which the former exorcist smiles through the pain and she keeps her breathing steady. Until after a last yell of pain, the sound of Irina's breathing is replaced with the cries of a newborn. About an hour later, Irina is sitting up and now holding a baby in her arms, a boy who only came into the world minutes ago. He looks like a normal human baby, but his body emits an aura around it. The others leave the room, save for Issei, Zenobia, and Asia, as Irina loving nuzzles her new baby boy in her arms, as Issei begins crying as well with a proud smile on his face. Zenobia rubs her stomach a bit, with Asia assuring her, it'll be any moment now, I'm sure. And Zenobia nods while the two return to look at their family's newest member, as he continues crying in his mother's arms. Riaz waits outside the door, now wearing her maid attire again after removing the suit, as she waits for the right moment to talk to Issei about a marriage. End of the here. So that's it for today's video guys, before you go just like the video and share it with your friends. Bye.